Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Libby Murray, and I'm excited to have our second webinar for this week featured by Lifetime Adoption. And if any of you are looking for past webinar replays, or if you're looking for upcoming dates on webinars that you can attend, you can always check out adoptionteleconference.com. That's where many of them will be available if they're open to the general public. And then, of course, if you are currently either considering Lifetime as a pre-approved family, or if you're already waiting with Lifetime, you get special access to even more webinars and special guests and topics throughout the month than the general public does. So, so stay tuned to your email for information about upcoming events. And if you ever have feedback or topics you'd like to suggest, we are completely open. This year has been jam-packed with guests that really was a result of people saying, you know, I like hearing from other people touched by adoption, and we have just loaded every month, has had at least one or two guests personally affected by adoption and sharing their personal stories. And I really have seen such a positive impact with all of you who keep attending and letting me know how helpful those stories are to hear. So we just want to continue to meet your needs and find out what you need to hear, which is kind of what leads me to today, which is that when Kim and I have hosted a few recent webinars, we polled the audience and found out that one of the #1 things that adoptive parents think about is how to talk to their child about adoption, and what questions will my child have, you know, growing up as part of our family through adoption. And I'm excited today to welcome our guests. We have actually, it's kind of funny. We were giggling. We have a few people that are part of Lifetime's team on our webinar tonight, but they are here as guests, which is kind of a unique twist. So I want to introduce to you in a moment Tonya, who assists our Lifetime families in making their profiles that go out to each and every birth mother that matches their preferences, and that she also works after hours with birth moms on occasion too. So she will share her perspective, and then also joining me is her mother, Karen, and I will introduce you to her in just a moment, but I wanted to go over a couple things. First, joining me as my co-host today is Kim King. Kim, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thanks, Libby. Hey, everyone.
Wonderful. You have the opportunity to ask as many questions as you want today, and we not only want to bring out Tonya and Karen's story, but also that Tonya has been eager and happy to answer your questions from her own perspective as a child, as part of that adoption triad. And you can type those in the questions box, or it might say chat. Many of you already practiced when you told me that you could hear us. So if you have a question today, you're welcome to share that with us, or if you have a comment or just any feedback that you feel either might help our audience or encourage our guests or get you the information that you need, feel free to interact with us today. And if you're joining us by phone, you can always email webinar@lifetimeadoption.com. Now, Kim, was it webinars or webinar?
I think it's just webinar. I'll type it in here. Remember last time? I'm sure some of you remember.
Yeah, if that fails, you can always shoot me an email directly. My name is Libby, Libby, @lifetimeadoption.com. So I just want to get started here. Tonya, are you there?
I am.
Wonderful. And Karen, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Great. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us. This is a very unique opportunity. We haven't really featured a story from this side of things before, so I feel a little rusty on where we should start. But Tonya, let's just start with just who are you? How did you come into your family so many years ago?
Well, I was placed into foster care at 10 months old and came to the home of Glenn and Karen Sullivan at that time, and eventually they were able to adopt me. So I never had the need to jump from home to home like many foster children end up needing to do. So I was very blessed in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. And so having been with them since you were a baby, do you remember growing up, hearing about your adoption, or when was the first time you really remember kind of getting a clue about, where you came from?
Well, it's kind of interesting. Since I was so young, it never really came up that often. I think the first time I remember talking about it and having this conversation is my younger brother had a birthday coming up, and he was asking Mom about the time of day he was born and, details of his birth. And so I was like, oh, how about me? What time was I born? I remember Mom going, well, I don't know. And I'm thinking, that's a little weird.
And how old were you at this time?
Oh, let's see. He was 4 years younger than me. So I don't know, like 12 or 13 maybe.
Okay.
So I remember Mom going, well, we had this conversation when you were 4. Don't you remember us taking you to the park and talking about how we were going to adopt you? I'm like, no, I don't. I actually remember that. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, but I believe that's about, when I was 4, I think is when they were finalizing the adoption.
Okay.
I think you were 5. I think you were in kindergarten because I had related to the mother of the one child in school that we had adopted her, and that kid went and asked Tonya something about, you were adopted? And so then we took her to the park and explained to her, that we had adopted her. But I don't know.
I don't remember any of that.
So now,
probably more interested in the playground at that time.
And Karen, when you welcomed Tonya to your family as a baby, did you have other children already?
I had one, my oldest daughter. She was, I guess, let's see, she's 8. Yeah, 8 years older than Tonya.
So, and is she your biological daughter, or was she adopted as well?
My biological.
Okay. And so, getting involved with foster care, what I want to draw out is the special story you told me yesterday, because now you had been a foster parent to other children, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then what I thought was cool is that yesterday you were telling me how it just seemed different with Tonya. Can you tell us the story you told me yesterday about how you saw her at the doctor's office on the floor just grinning away at you?
Yeah, there was, our neighbor girl went to this special school for the deaf, and there were children with all different various types of handicaps there. When you took the child, you had to sit with that child until the worker came out and got her. And while I was sitting there waiting, Tonya was sitting in the middle of the floor, and she kept staring at me. And I smiled at her, and she just kept staring. And I thought, well, I'm not your mother, And then the next day, Family Services brought her to us, and I kind of thought something looked familiar about her, and then when we took her coat off after the caseworker left, she had a very distinguishable birthmark on her arm. And I said, I knew I'd seen her before.
Wow. And so you had also shared how some people, you had had an experience with one woman who even tried to tell you, well, you won't love your child who you adopt as much as you do the child you gave birth to. And I know a lot of families, before they know too much about adoption, sometimes they have that concern, like, will it be different? And what was your experience with that, especially since you had other foster children and then Tonya comes into your life? Did you feel like there was a difference? Did you somehow know that she was your child?
I did. From the day they brought her, I kept thinking, she's mine, even though they told us she'll be up for adoption within 6 months, but you can't have her because of the distinguishable birthmark, and her mother and grandmother lived in that area. And but I couldn't help the other children. I was able to, set my mind to the fact that they're not permanent. They'll find another home or whatever. But with Tonya, felt from the very beginning, she's mine, you know, and later she became mine.
And I love hearing that because I hear that in different ways from almost every adoptive parent that I talk to, that just somehow they knew that was their child.
Yeah.
And then you went on, Tonya, you have two younger siblings?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, I mean, growing up, did you ever feel like there was a difference, Tonya, or?
Oh, well, all four of us are very different.
Regardless of birth, right?
Oh, yeah. We all have, you know, very strong opinions, but you know what? We're siblings just the same. I used to, you know, tease my little brother all the time, but because he would try to claim that he was the favorite. And I would tease him about, you know, well, I was picked. You were born, I was picked.
Yeah. We didn't have to take her. We chose to.
Yeah. So I kind of teased them about that a little bit, but for the most part, you know, we're siblings. I mean, there's differences, but I don't feel like they're different than any other group of people that are related. I would do anything for my brother and sisters, and I know they would do anything for me. We don't always get along, but hey, that's a sibling thing, I think.
Right.
Right.
And so as you know, I mean, that took a while for you to actually realize, you know, oh, I wasn't born to you like my brother? Okay. So from there on, do you remember having talks with your mom about, well, okay, so now that I remember having this conversation, unlike when I was in kindergarten, you know, after you realized why your mom didn't know exactly what time you were born, you know, did you ever have a lot of conversations, or did it come up again, or you tell us a little bit about just your childhood, or maybe how you would talk about or honor adoption after you found out, you know, that that's how you came to your family?
Well, naturally there's curiosity there. It was never like something we talked about all the time, but also it was very open conversation. I could come to Mom anytime and say, you know, what do you know? And she would tell me little stories like the one about me seeing her in the doctor's office, or different things like that. Or I've even heard from my grandma, you know, a quick story about the first time she met me when they came to visit. So it was, you know, it's not something we talked about all the time, like I said, but it was very open. And Mom and Dad and whoever, you know, whoever knew anything were always very willing to share what they did know. It being a closed adoption, you know, there's very limited information there. So, you know, the information I gathered was they're teenagers, and that's kind of close to it. I don't know what a whole lot more than that.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
we just.
And back then too, I mean, Karen and I were talking a little bit about this yesterday, is just how much the awareness about how a woman can choose adoption when she's not ready to parent has changed, even I would say in the last 10 or 5 years compared to, you know, Tonya, you and I are about the same age, so we'll give it, you know, 30 plus years ago when, you know, I think probably most people thought, if I'm not ready for this baby, I have to go to the state.
Right.
So did you know, at this point, you just know, like you said, those details that she was a teenager. Did you ever find out the names of your birth parents?
Yeah, there was a little bit of legal paperwork that I received from Mom in high school at some point that does have their names on them, but they're fairly common names, so it's a little hard to find them since they're so common.
So, I mean, some people on the call too wonder, you know, well, do you still want to find them? You know, what is that like for you now? Because I know that you and your mom, Karen, that you guys have a great mother-daughter relationship. I mean, I've heard how you talk about your mom. I've already heard the banter you guys have back and forth, and that it's, you know, do you, because some, and this is good to address too, because you and I talked about this, Tonya, but some children of adoption grow up and they are obsessed. They are very focused on birth history, gotta find it, and they circle around that a lot. And then there's other people who just feel like, well, that's part of me and I wonder it, but I don't stay up nights, you know, losing sleep over it. I mean, where do you fit in on that?
Yeah, I'd say, you know, my curiosity is definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely want to know who they are. Family history, medical history would be really nice to know, especially for my little guys at home. But
yeah,
it's, you know, as part of my growing up, I think I went through a time of being worried that if I looked for my birth family, that my parents would feel hurt, that I was looking for them, and they never were. Mom made it very clear, you know, I'll support you if you decide to look for them. I'll help you any way I can. But I also tried to make it very clear that they're my parents, and they always have been, and they always will be. So, you know, while I'm curious and I would like to find them, I think mostly I want to find them and thank them for the choices that they made, that I have a chance to, you know, be alive, for that matter, and thank them for the choice of, you know, placing me in foster care even, because that's how God brought me to my family, who I wouldn't, you know, I always thought about how my life would be totally different had they not made that choice, and all the different situations that I could have gone through that I probably was protected from, being that I grew up in the family that I did.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I've heard, when I've had the chance, I have a few friends who were adopted, and I know a few colleagues, and that is something I think, when I would say probably, would you agree that that has something to do with the fact that your mom is so supportive of you having those questions, that she doesn't feel threatened by them, that it allows you to not feel so much like, well, what are you hiding, you know?
Oh, totally.
Why can't I know this information?
Right, absolutely.
Because now you work in open adoption, which is completely different than the experience that you have and had as a child. We actually had a question come in here, thank you, Shannon, that said, Tonya, in your opinion, should adoptive children meet their birth parents, and if so, should they wait until after 18?
Wow, that's a good question. You know, I think if I had a chance to meet my birth parents at a young age, I don't think my opinions would have changed at all. My family's my family. And I know I've seen it, you know, working here, and I know I've seen studies, you know, over and over again show that when adopted children know of their birth parents and even know them, that it's just healthier for everybody all around. I definitely think that children who are adopted should know at a very young age, as opposed to trying to hide it till they're teenagers. I think that can often cause a lot of issues. But when the conversation's open and they know it from the beginning, you know, it's kind of just like normal life. Just like anyone who's born into their family through birth, then it's normal to them. For me, being adopted was normal. It wasn't strange in any way. Had I had the chance to meet my birth parents at a young age, I think that would have been great as well.
Now, I know
earlier,
oh, go ahead,
Tonya,
Kim.
you mentioned that, it's okay. You mentioned, Tonya, earlier that it wasn't something you guys talked about all the time, you know, but I think that's normal. We don't just all talk about the way we were born all the time, you know, so that's just another testament of how it was just factored into regular life just like anyone else. And I'm also, you know, interested to see, you know, Karen, as you hear Tonya talk about her point of view, you know, I hope that you can share some things with us about how you felt when you decided to have those conversations with Tonya and be so open with any and all information you could give her and the support that you offered her, where did you come from in your heart as you made that parenting decision?
Well, I felt that she would always wonder, about her biological mother. And I have no qualms about her finding that out, I feel there is a natural curiosity in an adopted child to want to know that. And I don't feel that that's anything that should be kept from them in any way.
Mm-hmm.
I can't understand these people that let their kids become teenagers, and either the kid finds out by running across some papers or, something like that, and I just don't feel that's right. I think you need to be upfront with them and let them know.
Yeah.
So did you feel any type of concern about Tonya ever meeting her birth parents, like how Tonya said, she didn't really feel, well, correct me if I'm wrong, Tonya, but you didn't really feel like you really wanted to search because you were worried it might hurt your actual parents who were with you every day.
Mm-hmm.
Karen, what would you say to that? What were your thoughts about that? Would that have hurt you in any way? Or what if it, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, how do you have that confidence in your heart that you're her mom and that if she meets her birth parents or not, you're still the mom you've always been to her? How do you have that?
Yeah. Well, I never saw Tonya as a rebellious type of child that would have thrown it in my face, and said that, well, I'd rather be with them or whatever, along that line. She was always very accepting of the fact that she was adopted, and I don't know. I just feel it is a natural curiosity, and
Karen, were you ever curious for your own self? Because I know a lot of adopted parents these days want to choose open adoption because it kind of gives them a heads up to their own child's medical history, so that it's not even so much about having the story, but just some of the logistics too, like, well, what happened to her in the first 10 months of her life?
Right.
Or during pregnancy.
That was something that, as far as the medical part of it, I wish that we could have had more information there. Mm-hmm. There was obviously some reason that the grandmother was there that day. She had, I don't know whether there was another grandchild with her or a late in life child that was attending that special school and seeing those doctors and so forth. So, I have always wondered about that. What was the deal there, and would like to have known more about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And Tonya, what I have always appreciated about your side and your perspective is because I knew you before you worked at Lifetime, and then definitely through this last year plus that you've been part of Lifetime's team, is that you've answered questions for people in a perspective that's unique to what a lot of us have to offer when we're just mostly working with the women and the families, because these babies are too young to have a voice yet. And that you have shared such a sincere heart for birth mothers, but it also is so balanced with just this excitement and this joy and these blessings for the adoptive parents. Can you talk a little bit about what it's been like to work in an adoption environment when you have your own personal experience that not only is adoption but is completely different than the clients you serve?
It's been really amazing. Being able to see all the aspects of it. You're right, we don't get to talk to the kids very often. Occasionally, a family who's been adopted a long time ago will come in with their child and we'll get to meet them, which is really, really neat. And I think being able, I don't get to work with birth mothers very often. You know, just being on call for them occasionally. I really find satisfaction in being able to be there to educate them in all the possibilities and to know that, you know, when it comes up, I can tell them, hey, adoption can be a good thing, because I'm proof of that. And then seeing our families build their families through adoption and seeing how open it is. I mean, I think one of my favorite things about working here is that we advocate for open adoption so much, so that those communication lines are open, that they can get, you know, adopted children can get their questions asked and answered, and know where they come from. So all of those aspects of open adoption are just, I think, a wonderful thing that has come about.
Yeah, and I know too, well, and some of the families on the call, I know they'll recognize you from having worked through the profile process with you. I would say you probably bring a lot to that table as well, because, you know, these profiles are going to meet the faces of women considering adoption for a newborn or a child, but you're not only looking at the profiles from the perspective of someone touched by adoption, but you're also a mother now. You know, and so it kind of allows her, and then I think just by the grace of God that you really do have just this balanced perspective of all sides of the adoption that really allows you to just pour that out on the people that you touch. And, you know, growing up, oh, go ahead.
Well, on that note, I mean, when you're talking about helping families create profiles, a desire that I have had, aside from my two gorgeous biological boys, was to adopt myself. So when I'm working on profiles, I often look at it as, what would I want my profile to look like? What do I, you know, I want it to come across in a quality for this family the way I would want it to. So that's important to me as well, that our families are able to put something out there that will really catch the eye of just the right birth mother for their family.
Exactly. Oh gosh, I just lost my train of thought, but I am showing a super cute picture of your boys. Do your kids know that you were adopted?
They do. Again, it's one of those things we don't talk about all the time, but they definitely know. Right at this moment, I can't remember, you know, why I've ever brought it up to them in particular. But just the other day, actually, my youngest, Michael, he's the little guy in the red shirt in the photo there, randomly comes up to me and says, I'm really sorry you don't know your real parents, Mom. So it just opened up a door to be able to tell them, you know, I know my real parents, you know, Grandma and Grandpa are my real parents. And you're right, I have biological parents out there that I haven't met yet. And just be able to answer those questions for them. And actually, even just last night at dinner, they were talking about, I think they've been talking about different continents and different, you know, family lineage history, and wanting to know what my history was, and the fact that I don't really know that, biologically speaking. You know, if my family came from Ireland originally, or what, any of that stuff. So yeah, it's definitely even an open conversation in my house now, for sure.
Well, and what you reminded me of too was that you told me yesterday, just in preparing for this webinar, that you and your mom have had all these sort of remember when stories kind of coming back to your memory. You know, which I think, and then you and I had a conversation about, yeah, I mean, moms are there for you. I mean, whether you were raised through adoption or born biologically, you're going to have that child's childhood in your memory. You know, that you're going to have all those stories of, remember when you did this and you fell off your bike, and first time we went to church, or, you know, whatever it was. You know, what has maybe come up just in sort of bringing this story up to the surface just this month in preparation? Is there any conversation that you've had with your mom or your family that hasn't come out before, or that's just been good to talk about again?
Well, you know, most of what we've been talking about is just family stuff that's happened. You know, the quick wit of my younger sister when she, their little um, attitude even as an infant. um, or, you know, I was thinking the other day too about my younger brother and how he used to, my older sister and I would be sitting laying on the floor watching TV together, and he'd like come and sit on both of us at the same time and try to ride us like horses. And just, I mean, mostly just family stuff. I don't know that we've talked specifically a whole lot about the adoption aspect of it as much.
Yeah, but just to be there for you.
Oh.
Karen?
I said, or the way when he first learned to walk, he would toddle up between them and grab both their hair and then flop down.
Oh.
What a joy.
Set them both screaming.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cute.
Or how I would chase my older sister around with earthworms because she thought they were gross and I thought they were cool.
That's funny. Yeah, I could picture you as kind of a little tomboy playing with earthworms. That would make sense. Tonya, you told me a special story this week about, because some families, as they bring their babies home, there's sort of this thing called Gotcha Day that seems like an adoption tradition that some families have started. And since you've sort of found out, just or had clarity about it later, did your family ever celebrate that kind of milestone with you or for you? Or?
You know, I got a surprise one year, I don't know, junior high or high school. I got up and went in the kitchen, and there's these carnations are my favorite. And there were these gorgeous carnations sitting on the table for me. And this card that has every year since come and made me bawl tears from my mother about how thankful she was that that's the day that I came to live with them.
Oh.
In fact, it was just last week on the 9th, and I got my card from Mom. And my boys were like, "Why are you crying, Mom?" And, you know, so I had to read it to them. So, you know, as a young child, it wasn't so much that, but, and I don't know what possessed them to start doing that, but it's almost like having a second birthday, kind of, yeah. You know, it's the day that we're thankful for that you came to live with us.
Yeah. And you talked to me, too, about how special your adoption story is to you because of your boys. Can you tell me what that means?
You know, again, it goes back to the chances I've had in this life that I may not have had otherwise. That how thankful I am that my birth mother chose life in the first place. Because without that, you know, with all the struggles and things that I've had in my life, despite any of that, I wouldn't have these two boys. And the world, I mean, I know I'm Mom, so I brag, but they're witty and they're talented, and you know, I've got one who's a good athlete who loves to run, and the other one who is probably one of the most skilled artists I've ever seen at his young age, especially for not having any art classes of any kind. And I just know that they're going to contribute something to the world that no one else can, and they wouldn't be possible had I not had the life I had, and had I not been given the chances that I've been given and loved on by my family the way I was.
Wow, and I know the picture that I just brought up, I remember this was their baptism last year, right?
Yeah, last summer. Yeah, I felt like a baby then too.
Well, and you grew up in a Christian family, right?
Yes.
You know, and so as a Christian, I look at this picture too, and I think, wow, you know, not only the chances that you had in this world, but also the salvation that you were offered through your family that you now pass down to your boys. You know, that's the kingdom picture right there, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. I've again, that's I've always wondered, would I have found, I think I would have found God and salvation eventually. I just don't know if I would have at such a young age. And I truly think that start kept me out of so much trouble. Oh.
Yeah,
I feel this picture needs a little explanation.
Yeah, I think so. I know I needed it the first time I saw that hair.
So if you can't see this photo, it's my oldest son and I, and we're making crazy faces at the camera because we like to be silly and weird.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition, my hair is purple. My son has a genetic disease called cystic fibrosis. So that is the reason my hair is purple, and this is at an event called Great Strides, which is something held every year to raise money and awareness for cystic fibrosis. So I decided this year, rather than just walk, I was going to dye my hair purple because that's the ribbon color for CF. And yeah, that's just our personality. That's the real us right there.
We had a couple questions come in. One of them said, Tonya, what do you think is the hardest thing about having been adopted? Do you ever feel differently or that you missed out on anything?
I think had I not been so well loved and had my parents not been so open about everything, I would have felt I was missing out on something. Like I said, our family had its own issues. We're dysfunctional like everybody else, but I don't think I missed out on anything. Actually, I think I gained far more than I missed out on. The hardest thing, I think, is just that curiosity and not being able to thank my birth parents for what they've done. But I don't think, and yes, I'm definitely different, but I don't know that it's because I'm adopted. My mom used to have a saying, I'm sorry?
Oh, go ahead. Tell us. We're here to hear you.
I was just saying my mom always said that she came from a long line of dingbats, and I think I fit in that quite well.
Yes, you do.
Oh, that's funny.
Tonya, I was going to ask you, in your work that you're doing with adoptive parents and what you do with birth moms, the fact that here at Lifetime we are such advocates of open adoption, does that help you in some way to know that you are paving the way for generations from here into the future to not have to wonder and have those curiosities? Does that help you like in maybe a full circle type of way, coming from where you've come from and with the curiosities you have, and knowing that the work we're doing, these children won't have to have those questions, that they'll get answers?
Absolutely. It's been a joy to watch families come together and know that they're going to have these kind of open conversations, and that many of them will have it, those occasional visits with their birth mothers even. Not all of them. Sometimes, birth mothers don't necessarily want that for whatever reason. But, to know that they'll have that communication lines open between their family they're growing up with as well as their biological family, it's very satisfying to me to know that they'll be able to communicate for sure.
And, I think about that too, because my mom was adopted from Korea, and so we also have no information. And it sure would help to have that medical information. Like you were pretty firm in stating that was one big thing that would really help you, is if you had the medical information. I think with the way that here at Lifetime we work with birth moms to get as much information as possible, even if she chooses not to stay in contact with the family on into the future, at least they have that basis. They hopefully will have, those medical records to go back to, the medical history she filled out. That's part of our requirement and everything.
Right. And I think, too, just being able to know that a birth mother can have that peace of mind. I mean, I don't know my birth mother. I don't know what kind of questions she had. If she chose to put me into foster care, or if somebody took that choice out of her hands. So the fact that women have such control over who adopts their baby, and whether or not she has visits with them, and all of that is really it's really a comfort for me, and I know it's a comfort as I've talked to a few birth mothers. They find out that they can have those choices. They're like, oh, wow, that's amazing. I feel so much better now.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And we've had a few people question just, thinking about, because you've already pretty much addressed it, but just, I think what you just said just now, just having that choice, because you don't know. You don't know if your birth parents, were really given a sincere choice, or if someone sort of pressured them into that, or just took away all their options and said, this is pretty much it. Have you thought about, well, what if I never get answers to these questions? Where are you at making peace with the need for that information versus just being curious?
I think it's still to this day pretty much what it's always been like. It's important for me to find out, but it's not the end all of who I am. Mm-hmm. I am who I am because of the family who raised me. My biological birth family is a huge part of that as well, because obviously there's differences that can't be explained otherwise. But I don't think it's something that's so important that I'm going to have it eat up all of my time in life trying to find them.
Right.
Have
you met people who were adopted and that don't feel like you, that feel like, no, I have to know that?
I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I know it's probably out there. I know some kids who've grown up, in closed adoption like mine, can feel a little bit bitter that their birth family didn't want them for whatever reason. So I know there's differing opinions out there, but I don't know. And I know some have looked and had success, and not some of them not. But I don't know that any of them. I've not had in-depth conversations with other adoptees about that in particular that I can think of.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and I just keep hearing through both you and your mom here just that I would say, regardless of the openness on the birth family side, just that you had openness within your own family really seemed to help. Just, I would say, just as a model even for good parenting, that you don't have to talk about things all the time with a child, and certainly you don't talk about things that are beyond their developmental understanding or their age appropriateness, but just that that your mom, your family embraces you, but also is supportive of the fact that that you have a different story. And that if there's a question that come out of that it's not a condemning thing or a threatening thing, that it just, to me, it sounds like maybe you have such a good perspective because your family, your mom, was so willing to just let you have those questions.
Yeah, totally. And it was, again, it wasn't like she said, okay, we're going to sit down and talk about this right now. It was, I'd come to them with a question and she would answer it,
Well, like last night, if those of you were on last night's webinar, we had a birth mother and an adoptive mother talking about this boy that unites their two families, and they were just, we brought up the question, well, does he have questions, especially since you're all so involved with each other? Does he really understand his birth mother's role and who she is? Does he really know about his adoption at 9 years old? And they said, well, he'll come to us with a question, and then, they'll start to answer it in a age-appropriate, sensitive, and just serious, honest way. And, 2 minutes into it, he's like, all right, I want to go watch a movie. I mean, it's not like he's sitting there dwelling on it. He's not, you know, it's not tearing his whole day down because he's just a kid. He has questions, and probably just hearing that they're not afraid to answer him is probably what he needs at this point, is just, oh, you're not hiding anything from me. All right, I'm out of here, you know. And you know what, I think maybe for both of you too, let's start with Karen, since we haven't heard from her in a little bit. But you know, Karen, do you know other adoptive parents to this day, or do you know other people that have asked you about your story because they're thinking about adopting?
No, I can't say that I really do, you know. I mean, people have been curious about adoption, you know, and they say that went off on a rabbit trail there.
Yeah.
But just asking me different questions about it, and, you know, I told them that, you know, I don't feel any different toward her than I do my other biological children. In fact, I credit her, and not necessarily in an absolute way, but her adoption was finalized in December, and I had been praying, and I said, Lord, okay, if you're going to give me two beautiful girls, and that's all, because my husband and I had been married 7 years and had not had a child of our own. And I said, Lord, then I'm accepting that. I gave away the maternity clothes, the crib, everything, and got pregnant a couple of months later.
And what did I ask for? I asked for a baby sister.
And you gave her a
brother. No, I'm sorry. She asked me if I wanted a sister, and I asked for a brother, and I got it.
Oh, look at that. What a nice mom. You know, and Tonya, I mean, I just want to make sure that you get a chance to just really share the heart you have. So I wrote down a couple of questions. You know, what is it that you really want to make sure, number one, that any birth mother thinking about adoption or who has chosen adoption, what would be your biggest wish for her to hear from your heart, just by your own experience, not as an expert, but just from your own background?
I would have to say that I know that adoption's not the choice for everyone. It's not the perfect answer for every birth mother or every family. However, it is an excellent option to think about and seriously consider if you feel at all you can't, you know, care for your child or give them the opportunities that you want them to have. Because I just know my life would be so totally different without adoption.
And so how, and you could maybe base this a little bit off of your just experience too with Lifetime, but also just because to me I hear your story and I hear you and your mom talk, and I just think you guys are totally meant to be together.
Well, we look alike, even.
You do.
I was going to say, you look alike in all these pictures.
Well, you know, what do you tell people who are just, they already know they want to adopt, but they're just sitting there waiting for that child to come into their lives? You know, what do you know from your heart and your experience that might encourage them, especially as we're going toward, you know, the holidays, when people might be thinking, I was really hoping to celebrate this, you know, as a family, and I'm still waiting. You know, how do you encourage families?
Oh,
you're cutting out.
Is it better?
Yes.
Okay. I was just saying, I know the wait is definitely the most difficult part for everybody, whether they've been waiting a few months or years, or their particular story and their particular wait. I know it's difficult. But I've also heard from families countless times when they get their baby, just thank God so much for even for the wait, for however long it will take, because they know for sure that this is the baby that they were supposed to have. So that, they look back and see how all the struggle and all the waiting was worth it. I don't know if that helps answer your question at all.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And I just want to shout out, if anybody has a question that they want to get in here before we end today's call. I know that Tonya's happy to answer anything for you. And while we have them here, if you have anything you just want to share or pipe up about, you can type that into the questions or chat box on your screen. I see a couple here. I'm going to do this.
So I see one here from Monica. She was asking if you've reached out to any adoption websites that maybe help reunite, or are you part of any adoption circles with adoptees, or as a kid did you go to any special camps or anything like that to reach out to other people who were also adopted?
As a kid, no, I don't remember doing anything like that. Life was just life. It was pretty normal. I have done some, internet searches, gone onto some adoption websites and looked around and poked around a little bit. Haven't got a lot of feedback. Like I said, their names are really common. Like the last name of my birth father is Baker, and you can find about 100 Bakers in any town you go to. So, there's not been a whole lot of success with the internet search. You can use somebody, left any feedback on any of my threads anywhere, things like that.
But now, if you had the opportunity to maybe attend any of those groups and be around other children who came through adoption, do you think that's something that adoptive parents today should reach out to, or what would your advice be for them if they're interested in doing something like that? How would you feel? I think
for me, when it comes to an adoption camp or something like that, I would have been like, oh, cool, we get to go to camp.
It wouldn't have mattered. The adoption link wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah, I mean, and I went to summer camp.
Anyone else.
Yeah, I went to summer camp. We did fun things. And we have a couple of cousins that are adopted. And they are actually, Caucasian family, and they're 2 African American children, so they were adopted into a Caucasian family. And I know they would drive over an hour out of their way to go to a church that was, more culturally diverse, so that their children would have that diversity in their life. But as far as, connecting with other adoptees, I think that's just going to happen naturally. At least it has for me. I'll talk to people and they're like, oh, I'm adopted too, or my sister's adopted, or I have a cousin that's adopted. That stuff comes up in conversation kind of naturally, I think. Maybe, maybe if you see that your child is struggling with that, that might be something to look into. But like I said, I don't think it's ever been, for me at least, a big deal to have to connect with other adoptees.
Right.
Tonya, there's a question that's been burning on my mind for half of this webinar today, and that is, if you could get your birth mom on the phone and say anything you wanted to her, or if you could send her a letter and share from your heart what you would want her to know, what would you say?
That is a good question. I would just have to thank her. I mean, of course, there's a curiosity of what was going on in your life at the time, what pushed you to that choice. But I would, number one, want to tell her thank you for giving me the family I had. 2 parents who weren't perfect but loved me more than anybody else could have. I think that initial call would be interesting, okay, nice to meet you. Would be interesting. But yeah, I would definitely love to spend that time to get to know her, even my birth father, and what their life has been like. If I have other half siblings out there, That would be really interesting to know. And just take the time to let them know that I'm grateful for the life that I've been given.
And also that you have these 2 boys now.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I would love to introduce my biological family to my boys.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing this, and you know, I know that every adoption story is so different. Not everyone, from all sides of it, not everyone is comfortable talking out about their story, and I want to thank you too, Karen, for being here and for bringing out your side of it too, because I know that this is one of the things most adoptive families are curious about as well. I know I would love a child, but will I benefit a child? Will it be different to raise a child through adoption? And everything I've heard today just reassures me that what I hear from most people is true, and what I see happening in these families is just that it's a family, and there's good days and bad days and discipline days and praise days, and you know, like you're gonna have your celebrations, and I'm sure Tonya, growing up, that you might have had those days when you just thought, you know, my mom's so unfair or whatever, but as all children do. And I just want to thank you for sharing from your heart today, and all of you for being here and listening. We had a relatively quiet audience, Kim. I think everybody
quiet today.
was just so tuned in. But also, I just want to take this opportunity to shout out a happy Thanksgiving to all of you, because that'll be next week. And that Lifetime's office will be closed next Thursday and Friday, but that we will be still answering our 24-hour birth mother hotline. So if you are matched, or if you're not matched yet, still keep your cell phones charged, because I have been known in the past to call families on Thanksgiving, and just because our office is closed doesn't mean that there aren't still adoptions and things happening behind the scenes 24 hours through that long weekend. So so keep your cell phones charged. Please let us know also, you know, if there's any information that we can get you that might answer some of the questions that Tonya's story might have brought up for you. Just reach out to us. Our office number is 530-432-7373. And again, you can always email your coordinator if you already have one. And if you don't yet have a coordinator, just call our office, or you can always email me and I'll forward it to the right person. My email is Libby, Libby, @lifetimeadoption.com. And I just thank you all for being here, and for some of you for being here twice with me this week. So,
and I see one person is a first-time webinar attendee, and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome.
You know, we have so much planned in the coming weeks and months, so hopefully you'll be back again. For those of you who are new and are just getting to know us here at Lifetime, we have a website that you can go and read through frequently asked questions. We have a streamlined application process, and our application is free online. Lifetimeadoption.com/apply is a really easy way to get to the application. Just at least get your eyes on it, take a look at the types of questions we ask, and just so you know, there is never a commitment or obligation just by filling that out. It really just is a way to start a conversation with you, so we can determine if we might be the best fit to help you with your adoption. So that's at lifetimeadoption.com. And also, I want to give you my email, too, if you don't already have it. It's Kim, K-I-M, @lifetimeadoption.com.
Wonderful. I did want to share, Kimberly, thank you. I'm going to share this now and not later, because I think that many other people on the call will think this is good. But Tonya, there was one comment that said, please tell Tonya that the comment about being a little different but not likely because of adoption made me laugh. Because I think that's probably true. Like you said, for everyone, we all have our little quirks, and every family is different. Whether you were built biologically or through adoption or both, that it's just so true. You are you, and your story is just part of you. And I know that that'll be true for all of the families here who will someday have their own happy ending to share. So thank you again for everyone being here today. Karen, thank you so much. We just really appreciate your time today to share.
That's all right. Could I share one quick story?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. When she was a senior, she was in a play, and their drama teacher had the seniors that were in the play take a rose, step to the microphone, say something, and then take the rose down to their mother. And Tonya was the only senior in the play this time. And she stepped toward the microphone. I was on the front row, and she said, I want to thank my mom for putting up with me and for running me so many places and everything, she said. But most of all, I want to thank her that when I was very little, she let me come live with her. And of course, I lost it, you know. And a lady from the audience came up and she said, how dare you? She said, you win 3-act comedy by making every woman in this place cry.
She loves her mama.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and wisdom and advice and experience. I know it's such a blessing to all the future parents and parents here who are already parenting through adoption. I mean, this has been very insightful, and I've really enjoyed our conversation with you today, Karen.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it too.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to wrap this up, and again, if any of you have questions or feedback about this call, I would love to hear from you. So please reach out and let us know how we can bring more stories like this to you, or if you have any questions that we can help you with. So everyone have a great rest of your week, and we'll talk with you again soon. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.